All right, we have a good amount of people on the call, so we'll get started. Again, thank you all for being here. This is the information session for Printmaking Drawing Book Arts for the 2026 NYSCA NYFA Artist Fellowship. My name is Audrey Tauberger. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a senior program officer at NYFA, or the New York Foundation for the Arts, in the Grants Department. I will be taking us through a presentation today and then answering some questions at the end. I also have my colleague Raina on the call who will be dropping some helpful links in the chat, and then will also be helping me field questions towards the end. Before we get started, we are offering applications in 5 categories this year. One of them is printmaking, drawing, book arts. We also have applications open for the craft sculpture category, digital electronic arts, nonfiction literature, and poetry. And we have had information sessions for all of the other 4 categories. For this program, you can apply for up to 2 categories. So if you're interested in applying for one other category aside from printmaking, drawing, book arts, you can. And the information sessions are now up on YouTube and NYFA's website on the fellowships page. This information session will also be recorded and will be uploaded to NYFA's webpage within the next week as well, and it will also have captioning. I also wanted to mention that we currently have a panelist nomination form open. The panelist nomination form is open to New York-based artists, cultural workers, educators, and community leaders who would like to participate as a panelist for this 2026 program. They'll be tasked with reviewing applications in the category that they are an expert in, and it will include multiple rounds of scoring and will culminate in a virtual panel discussion. This is open to artists who are not applying to the 2026 NYSCA NYFA Artist Fellowship. So if you are not able to be a panelist for the same year, but you can nominate somebody if you think they might be a good fit, or you can also send the form if you are applying, but you know somebody who might want to be a panelist. And again, the nomination form is currently open. We're accepting applications through Submittable, and the form will close on January 6, 2026 at 5 p.m. Eastern. However, we do encourage early submissions. An agenda for today's meeting will start with a grant overview and then talk through applicant eligibility, the evaluation process, how you can apply. We'll go through the application questions specifically for this category and some tips for applying, and then we'll end in a Q&A. You can ask questions at any point during the presentation using the Q&A box that should be at the bottom or the top of your Zoom screen. We just ask that you wait until I go through the portion of the presentation that you have a question for, just in case I do go over it during the info session. Also, before we get started, some important dates. Applications are currently open for this program, and they close on Tuesday, January 27th, 2026 at 5 p.m. Eastern. 5 p.m. Eastern is a hard deadline, and that is when the submittable form closes. So we recommend that you give yourself ample time before applying. And then regardless of the notification status, you will be notified if you applied in summer 2026. A brief overview of this program. The NYSCA Artist Fellowship is an $8,000 unrestricted cash grant available to artists living in New York State and or one of the tribal nations located therein. The grant is awarded in 15 different disciplines over a 3-year period, which means we offer 5 categories per year, and the application is free to complete. The NYFA Artist Fellowship is not a project grant, but it is intended to fund an artist's vision or voice at all levels of their artistic development. So before applying, it's important to make sure that you are eligible. For this program, you can apply if you are 25 years or older by the application deadline date, which is January 27th, 2026. So by that date, you must be 25 years or older in order to apply. You must be a current resident of New York State and or one of the tribal nations located therein. You must have maintained New York State residency and or residency in one of the tribal nations for at least the past 2 consecutive years. So for this program, it would be all of 2024 and 2025. So for example, if you moved to New York State in the middle of 2024, you would not be eligible for this year's program. You are not able to be enrolled in a degree-seeking program of any kind when applying. You also must be the originators of the work. So for example, you must be applying as a choreographer or playwright rather than the interpretive artist, which would be the dancers or actors. And this depends on the discipline that you're applying within. More eligibility. You must not have received a NYSCA Artist Fellowship in any discipline in the past 5 years. If you have been awarded a NYSCA Artist Fellowship outside of the past 5 years, you can apply, but you're not able to submit any of the work samples that have been previously awarded a NYSCA Artist Fellowship. Also, collaborating artists are eligible to apply, but the total number of artists applying in a collaboration cannot exceed 3 individuals, and this includes the submitter. If you are applying in a collaboration, all of the collaborators must meet all of the eligibility criteria for this award. And if you are applying as a collaboration, you cannot also apply separately as an individual in the same year. As I mentioned before, applicants can apply in a maximum of 2 categories per year. Again, we offer 5 categories per year, and so you can apply for up to 2. You must not be a current NYFA employee or have been in the last 12 months, a member of NYFA's Board of Trustees, the Artist Advisory Committee, a 2026 panelist, or an immediate family member of any of the aforementioned. Also, artists who have been awarded 5 NYSCA Artist Fellowships receive emeritus status and are no longer eligible for the award. Next, I'll talk through the evaluation process for this grant. So applications will be reviewed over the course of 3 elimination rounds by panelists. For the first and second round, the panel will carefully review and score assigned applications independently, and from there, the highest scoring applications will then move on to the next round of review. For the culminating third round, the panel will all meet as a group and discuss the final applications that have made it into that round, and it will ultimately conclude by the selecting of fellows and finalists. Again, fellows receive a $8,000 unrestricted cash grant. And for finalists, as of 2024, there will be 3 finalists per category, and each finalist will receive a grant of $1,000. So throughout all rounds of review, applications are reviewed based off of 3 evaluation criteria. The first evaluation criteria is artistic merit. A competitive application demonstrates excellence in their discipline through strong work samples that highlight the applicant's creativity, technical proficiency, and cohesive artistic vision. The second evaluation criteria is clarity and cohesiveness. A competitive application presents clear, concise, and compelling support statements that provide valuable insights into their practice and motivations. The support statements should work together with the submitted work samples to provide a comprehensive understanding of the applicant's vision and goals. And the third evaluation criteria is originality and innovation. A competitive application showcases innovative methods, ideas, and/or concepts that make their work stand out within the discipline. Panelists will assess the uniqueness and originality of an applicant's approach, including the quality of execution, innovation in materials or techniques, and the overall impact of your work. Applicants may also demonstrate innovation through place-based work that is informed by or responsive to a specific location, community, or environment. And again, all of the applications are reviewed based on these 3 evaluation criteria across the 3 rounds of review. So I definitely recommend having them in mind as you're drafting your application. They are listed on NYFA's website on the fellowships page if you ever want to reference them. Next, we'll talk through how to actually apply. So we accept all applications through Submittable. So if you don't already have a Submittable account, you'll have to make one. You can make one for free on submittable.com. And we have different applications for all 5 categories. So when you're going to apply, make sure that you are clicking into the right application for the category that you would like to apply to. And if you are applying for 2 categories, you will have to submit separate applications for each one. When you click into the application form, you'll be taken to an eligibility form that will have a series of eligibility questions that you'll have to answer correctly in order to gain access to the application. Once you do, you'll be taken to the main application, and you can start your application today. If you're not ready to submit, you can save it as a draft by going to the bottom of the screen and clicking Save as Draft. And then once you are ready, you'll click Submit. Once you do click Submit, you will receive a confirmation email to the email associated with your Submittable account. This just confirms that we have received your application. Sometimes this email goes to spam, so make sure you're checking there, but do make sure that you receive that confirmation email. And if you don't, you can always reach out and we can check on your application for you to make sure that it did go through. And then also just to say again, we get all of our applications through Submittable, so we don't accept any hard copies or emails of applications. And the deadline to apply is Tuesday, January 27th at 5 p.m. Eastern, and that's a hard deadline. We are not able to grant any extensions for this program. Okay, well, next get into the application form. So before we do, here is a definition that we use for printmaking, drawing, and book arts. This category includes work in visual media other than painting, including artist books, aquatints, collages, engravings, etchings, lithographs, monotypes, prints, serigraphs, woodcuts, cut paper, and drawings. Artists whose work involves painting only, including watercolorists, should apply it to the painting category when it's offered. Artists whose work involves the computer as a primary medium should apply in the digital electronic arts category. And we actually recently updated all of our fellowship discipline definitions. You can read them through the link in the chat, but they are meant to be more inclusive and responsive to the field at the moment. Okay, so the application form will include the eligibility form, the lead applicant information, and or the collaboration information if you are applying as a collaboration. You'll then be taken to work samples, support statements, and then it will end with the demographic information. The demographic information will not be shared with the panel, but will only be used internally for reporting purposes. So work samples are one of the most important parts of your application since it will be the primary point of review for panelists. And again, this program is not a project grant, and therefore you should be submitting work that is completed or a completed piece within an ongoing continuing body of work. For this program or for this category, applicants can submit up to 10 images total. We recommend submitting no less than 5 images, but you don't have to submit the maximum 10 images if you don't want to. Images can be representative of a singular body of work or multiple bodies of work. And we do recommend submitting work samples that have been produced in the past 5 years. If you do submit older work samples, we ask that you provide an explanation as to why you're choosing the older work samples in the work sample information section of the application. For your 10 images, you can submit JPEGs, which would be a maximum of 10 uploads. And again, each upload should represent one single work sample. Or you can submit a PDF file with one upload, which would be one upload with a maximum of 10 pages. And each page should represent one single work sample. And we ask that you do not include links within your PDF. Some further work sample information, images of diptychs, installations, and multi-part works are accepted. Providing multiple images of one work sample on a single JPEG or page of your PDF is acceptable in this category, but please do not submit multiple works in one JPEG or one page of your PDF in the pursuit of increasing the amount of work samples submitted. Again, you should be submitting up to 10 works. So on a single page, you can submit multiple angles or maybe multi-part works of one work on one page, but you should not be submitting more than one work on one page or one JPEG. Also, you can upload files of up to 400 megabytes each with a total submission limit of 800 megabytes. And then once you submit your work samples, a metadata section will appear, and you'll be asked to write the title of your piece, the date of completion, the materials used, and the dimensions of your work. We also recommend when formatting your images using the RGB color profile, which is the best for screen viewing on Submittable. You can use image editing software such as Photoshop, Canva, or Preview to edit, resize, and reformat your images. After you submit your work samples, the next question will be the work sample information. This is required, and you have up to 250 words for this section. So for this, we ask, in addition to your submitted images, briefly describe the context, concept, and execution of your work samples. If your work samples include multiple works, you can talk about them collectively, or you can itemize each one and talk about them individually. Also, if relevant, you can include how your work samples represent a larger body of work, whether the images document an installation, experience, performance, or time-based piece, and the intended circumstances in which the viewer and audience should experience the work, such as instructions for navigating the work if it's interactive. So this space is where you can provide more context for your work samples and also go into deeper detail. And this is a text box question. So we recommend drafting it in a Google document or Word document and then transferring it to your application. Next, we have your support statements. The first one being the artist statement. This is required and you have 250 words maximum. The artist statement is a concise statement giving an overview of your artistic practice. This statement should give a brief introduction to the ideas, themes, and methods in your practice, and it should answer the questions how you make what you make and why you make what you make. This statement should also specifically reflect the ideas and inspiration relevant to your submitted work samples. So again, cohesiveness and clarity is one of the evaluation criteria. So your artist statement should point back to your work samples directly. You can also use this statement to highlight your role in creating and executing the work, as well as describing key technical aspects of the work. And also, please note that this is not an artist bio. This is an artist statement. And we'll put in the chat an article that NYFA staff wrote a couple years ago on some 5 do's and don'ts when writing your artist statement, which can provide just more guidance as you're writing. And then the second support statement is your cultural statement, and this is optional. And if you are choosing to include it, you have 250 words maximum. The cultural statement is a supplemental statement that describes how your work is related to and or rooted in a specific cultural practice, tradition, or community. This statement can also offer an opportunity to describe how your artistic work relates to or stems from your culturally lived experiences. And again, this is an optional part of your application. And that is the last question. After that, you'll be taken to the demographic questions, but again, that's not part of the panel review process and will only be used internally. And we're nearing the end of the presentation. Before we move to the Q&A, here are some helpful application tips. Again, we recommend reading the application guidelines closely, most of which we did go through today, but we do have PDFs on our website for each category that list all of the application guidelines. And we also recommend carefully reviewing the eligibility questions on your application. Again, you won't be able to access the application itself until you answer those questions correctly and determine that you are eligible. Also, make sure the contact information that you provide on your application is correct. We use the email provided to reach out to you, so make sure that it's an email that is up to date and that you're checking regularly. Also allow enough time to upload your work samples, and in general, just give yourself ample time before the deadline to complete and submit your application. Again, 5 p.m. on January 27th is the deadline, and that is a hard deadline. We are not able to provide extensions. And if you're ready, you can start your application today, and you can always save it as a draft and come back to it if you are not ready to submit the day you would like to start. And that is the presentation portion of the information session. We will now go into our Q&A. So if you have any lingering questions, feel free to start dropping them in the Q&A box on Zoom. We also have a frequently asked questions section on NYFA's website that answer a lot of questions. And then if you also have a more specific question or we're not able to answer it today, you can always email us at fellowships@nyfa.org. But I will give it a moment before I start answering questions. But thank you all so much for tuning into this part. Okay, we're starting to get some questions, so I will start going through them. Our first question, if I create collage work and engraved paper art, can I apply for this category? Yes, that would be eligible for the printmaking, drawing, book arts category. The next question, can you submit multiple views of an artist book on one JPEG or PDF page? Yes, you can submit multiple views of an artist book on one JPEG or PDF page because it comes from the same work. Since we are submitting work in the beginning of 2026, does this mean that you recommend not submitting work further back than 2020 or 2021? We recommend submitting work samples that have been created in the past 5 years. So that would be 2021. You can submit work older than that. And if you do, we just ask that you explain in the work sample information why you are choosing to include that work. We have a question, would cyanotypes be more aligned with the printmaking, drawing, book arts category or the photography category? Cyanotypes would be eligible for the printmaking, drawing, book arts category. We have a question, is there a most common and successful work sample for book art submissions? Is it best or a good possibility to use all 10 images to fully show one book and its progression, or would a variety of projects be better? That's up to you as an artist. We've seen fellows do both, where they focus more on one body of work, and then we also see the opposite, showing a range of work. So that's up to you and what you feel is your strongest work. Again, it is important to look back at the evaluation criteria, especially with the clarity and cohesiveness, making sure that your work is connected to your artist statement. We have a question. Can you share if international artists on a O1B visa residing in New York for the past 4 years would be eligible to apply? So yes, you would be eligible as long as you have maintained residence in New York State for the past 2 years, which you said 4 years. So that means you would be eligible. We have a question. Does accepted work samples include pages of visual books like graphic novels? Yes, that would be an acceptable work sample, a page of a graphic novel, or drawings within a book as well. Is there any standard size requirement either for a PDF or JPEG work sample? We do not have a standard size requirement or any dimension requirement. So you can submit work samples of any size as long as they are under 400 megabytes. We have a question. Can you say a little bit more about the cultural statement? Does this mean within the tradition of the history of the book, for example? So I'll go back to the cultural statement page. So your cultural statement should relate back to you as an artist and your cultural background or the cultural practice that you make art within, rather than the cultural context of your work samples. It can relate to that, but it should be more about you and your work, and how it's related in a specific cultural practice. We have another question. If my artist books are hand painted, does that work or do they have to be drawn or printed images? If you're submitting an artist book, that would be eligible, regardless if they're hand painted or drawn or printed images. Another question, I use photographs as a starting point for my drawings. Does this disqualify them? No, they would still be eligible if they are a drawing or if you are applying with a drawing. We have a question, how are submissions viewed on Submittable? Will panelists be able to zoom into work samples? Um, you actually will be able to view on Submittable how your images will appear to panelists. So we do recommend that you look at that after you upload to make sure they look how you would like to. But yes, panelists will also be able to zoom in on images while they're reviewing applications on Submittable. The question, if your work does not make it through the first or second round, will you be notified earlier and will we be able to receive panelist feedback? So all notifications will go out at the same time in summer 2026. And unfortunately, we are not able to provide feedback due to the volume of this grant program. We have a question. I'm planning to publish a book of my artwork and poetry together. Is this eligible? So no, we only accept work in printmaking, drawing, book arts for this category. If you would like to submit poetry or written work, we do have poetry and nonfiction literature as an open category. So we would ask that you submit your visual work and your writing work in separate applications. We have a question. Are we able to see past recipients of this program and links to their websites? So yes, on our website, you can go to grant history on the fellowships page and view past recipients. I will also put the link in the chat as well. The question, to clarify, this is a project-based grant, or this is not a project-based grant. We are just presenting ourselves and our work, but not talking about what we want to complete for this fellowship. Yes, this is not a project-based grant. This is an unrestricted cash grant. So you're not applying with a specific project in mind, but this is more to support the vision of an artist, and you're applying with your artist statement and then work samples and then an optional cultural statement. We also have a question, is there no space for an artist bio? No, an artist bio is not part of this application. There is a question for an artist website. This is optional, so you don't need to provide that, but if you would like to provide your website, that will be a question on the application. We have a question. My work is in printmaking, such as solar print etching and monoprints. I also create books by scanning the prints, drawings, and watercolor sketches, and then digitally laying them out as an artist book. Is the artist book considered in this category, or should it be for the digital art category? That would most fit in the printmaking, drawing, book arts category. Another question, handmade zines and magazines would be included in the book arts and or printmaking category, right? Also to clarify, if a book includes cyanotypes and other printmaking processes, should this be submitted under this category? Yes, everything mentioned, zines, magazines, artist books, cyanotypes, and other printmaking processes would all fit under this category. We have a question, would a zine series that includes a collection of different people's work be eligible? And no, you need to be the originator of the work samples, so you can submit the portion of the zine series that you were the originating artist, but please do not submit work from other artists, even if it is in the same collection. Will the panelists know whether or not you've applied for another category? No, that's not available information to the panelists. We have a question, can you expand on the statement about each work? I believe that's referring to the work sample information. So I have it up on the screen right now. But this is a place where you can provide more context, and you can also provide a description for each of your work samples. Again, you can talk about them all together or you can talk about them individually. And then also it's a place where you can guide the panelists on how you would like to them to view your work, if there's something they should especially pay attention to, or if your work's interactive in any way, you can also include that in this work sample information. We have a question, was the technical statement taken out of the application this year? Should we incorporate that information into the artist statement? So yes, we are not including a technical statement this year. We only have the work sample information, artist statement, and cultural statement. I'm bringing up the artist statement page again. But yes, you can also highlight any specific techniques you use in your artist statement. You can also include that in your work sample information if that pertains to a specific work sample that you are submitting with. Should my images include my name, copyright notice, and date of the artwork creation? So for your work samples, once you submit it, a metadata section will come up. And there, yes, we do ask for the name of the work, the date of completion, and then also materials and dimensions. Copyright is not needed for your work samples. I have a question. I'm a painter as well as someone who makes drawings and book arts. Should my artist statement mention my painting practice as well? Yes, you can include your painting practice, or if you're a multidisciplinary artist, in any way, you can include that in your artist statement. But just making sure that the work samples that you are applying with are appropriate for this category. We have a question, do panelists check websites for exhibition history, etc.? So again, the website is a part of the application. It is not required. And if you do include it, panelists do look at the websites, but checking for exhibition history or anything of that nature is not part of the review. So that would not affect the review of your application. And this fellowship is intended to support artists at all stages of their career. There's a question, is there a way to see the work samples and artwork that each of the fellows won a fellowship with? Unfortunately, we are not able to show the work that the fellows were awarded a fellowship with, but we do hyperlink to their website so you can see their general work and practice. We have a question. Can you apply for this category this year and then another category in a future year that opens up for the fellowships? Yes, you can do that. You can apply for a category this year, and then if you work in a discipline that is open in a future year, you can also apply for that. We have a question. If I made all of the drawings and artwork but had assistance in the printing of a book, is that acceptable in the book arts category? Yes, that would be completely fine as long as, again, you're one of the originating artists. If you had collaborators or assistants in other parts of the work, that's okay. The work sample information is a place where you can talk about your role in creating the work and if there were any collaborators. We have a question, can a work be digitally edited and still be submitted for the drawing grant? Yes. If your work um, makes sense for printmaking, drawing, book arts, but you edit it digitally, it would still be eligible for this category. We have a question. I have both completed book projects and one or two new books that are still in progress right now. Should I include the in-progress work samples of the new pieces? So no, we ask that you only submit completed work samples or completed work samples within an ongoing body of work or project. So we do not accept in-process work samples for this grant. We have a question, should the work sample information be in a separate document? Should each piece have a number to distinguish it? So the work sample information is a separate question that comes after submitting the work samples, and this should just provide context for your work samples. If you are itemizing them and talking about them individually, I recommend either you can associate it with a number or you can put the title of the work. When you are submitting your work samples, you will have to include the title of your work in the metadata section, so that will already be included there. Okay, we're starting to slow down on questions, so I'll give it just a couple minutes before we wrap up. I have a question. Is it okay if I am applying as a collaboration with two artists who have just started to work together for the first time, but our work samples show projects that are completely individual? So if you're applying as a collaboration, you should be actively collaborating artists, and the work samples should come from you all as a collaboration rather than individually. If you are making work individually and are a new collaboration, I would recommend applying separately as individuals for this grant. If I am a resident of New York State, but I create work outside of New York State, and show work outside of New York State, is that eligible? Yes, you just have to be a resident of New York State, and a resident for the past 2 years, again, 2024 and 2025. But if your work is shown out elsewhere, or you maybe have a studio outside of New York State and you make work outside of the state, that's okay as long as you have residence. Can you please name the categories that are offered this year? Yes, so for the 2026 award cycle, we have applications open in craft and sculpture, digital electronic arts, nonfiction literature, poetry, and printmaking, drawing, and book arts. And that is five categories. Again, we have 15 total. They're all listed on our website, and each of the categories are offered every 5 years or every 3 years. I have a question. Can I include a video of a book or work on display? No, we do not allow video work samples for this category. You must submit a JPEG or a PDF, and we do not allow links on PDFs. We have a question. Would I be ineligible to apply if I am a 2026 Queen's Arts Fund panelist? So you would still be eligible to apply if you are a panelist for the Queen's Arts Fund. You just can't be a panelist for this specific program, the NYFA Artist Fellowship, along with applying. I'll answer this last question. Is there an interdisciplinary category offered at some point. I make work in poetry and book art together. We do have a interdisciplinary application that will open up in 2027. So next year includes interdisciplinary work. And with that, we're nearing 3 p.m. So we'll stop there. Thank you all so much for joining. Again, if I didn't get to your question, you can always email us at fellowships@nyfa.org. But we appreciate you tuning in today, and we wish you the best with applying. Thanks, everybody.